94.3 The Dude is very grateful to our men and women in uniform. We're proud to recognize local members of our military by turning the spotlight on them right now in our Soldier Salute.
I'm your host, Sergeant First Class Retired Don Sorensen, and on today's Soldier Salute, we're speaking with United States Marine Corps veteran Daniel Stover. Dan, tell me about yourself.
I grew up in Edwardsburg, Michigan, played football, worked, ended up graduating high school with almost an associate's degree in machine tool. Got to a point where I was in restaurant work, and I was a manager at the time, and I knew that there was bigger things for me in my life. It wasn't just to be a restaurant manager. So got a phone call one day, and next thing I know, I'm in a recruiter's office, and we're talking, and got denied the first time at MEPS, and my mom kept pushing me, try the other branches. So I walked in the Air Force office and talked to the Air Force recruiter, and he tells me, he says, what brings you into the Air Force recruiting office? I said, well, the Marine Corps, they won't take me down at MEP, so my mom wants me to try anything. He said, well, hold on a second, I'll be right back. So he goes down and he gets a different Marine Corps recruiter. Comes back down, he says, I need you to go back down there and talk to Staff Sergeant Seward and see what he can do for you. I said, yes, sir. So I walked down there, and next thing I know, I'm signing the dotted lines and rolling to MEPS, and next thing I know, I'm flying out to California to start the journey.
And the Marine Corps is so different than other branches of service. All they promise is that we get to be Marines. Tell me a little bit more about your Marine Corps experience.
So I was a multi-channel communications radio operator, served from 2000 2004. Did many different deployments overseas, as far as training ops and things like that in Spain, and flying out to Arizona or California, wherever they needed us to go out there and do training. I got deployed in February 2003. We landed in Kuwait. We were there for about a month. We were there till about March when we rolled up into the borderline. And I was sitting there at the borderline the night before we went ahead and blew it up, and it was like the 4th of July. Rolled through the next day, and it wasn't what I thought it was. When I saw some of the dead bodies and the tanks burned up and things like that, there's no going home. There's no turning back. There's only one way, and that's going forward. At that time, some things definitely changed inside that I didn't even recognize, but when you're in that mission, it's all about mission accomplishment, so you push everything to the back. You just keep moving forward. You got brothers and sisters out there depending on you, and so you out there to do your job and do the best you can do.
Dan, PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, is a word that almost everyone is familiar with these days. You were talking about rolling in and seeing some of the grim, grisly images of war. For you, was it a slow buildup, or was there one specific event that you feel you associate with when it comes to post-traumatic stress disorder?
I think that's a great question, actually, Don. One of the things I would say is when we first got in country, obviously you're going into something completely different than what you've grown up and you've known. Just when we landed in Kuwait, it's a whole different lifestyle, a whole different culture. Everything's completely different. So your world's already flipped upside down. And then it's just the constant missiles and things, and you don't know where they're going to land. You don't know what's coming. You don't know what's ahead. It's always the unknown, always walking into the unknown. And then, when you see casualty, it just changes your whole perspective of life. You can't go home to mommy. You're not running home. You can't turn around. There's no going back. There's not somebody sitting at an airport to pick you up to take you back home. The only thing taking you back home is when the mission is accomplished. And so at that point, when we rolled through, I saw those bodies and they're burned up inside those tanks. At that point in time, I realized this isn't a game no more. This is real life. This is reality. This is war.
Dan, the military prepares us very well, but they don't teach us how to come back home. Tell me how that went for you.
So that one hits home pretty hard. I got out in 2004, started going to college, working part-time, trying to find my way back into the civilian world. One of the things I noticed is my socialization skills were lacking. Even some of my old friends that I used to hang out with were like, man, what's wrong with you? And at that time, I started to notice that there was something different. And then once I got the job in the post office, that's when things really kind of started to identify themselves. I was actually delivering mail, and one of the customers happened to be a doctor. And Dr. McCree, I used to always give his dog treats. I was just that kind of guy, and I love dogs, And so we got to talking one day, and he asked me, he said, "Hey, Dan, have you ever thought you might have depression?" And I was like, "No." He said, "I would like to strongly encourage you to maybe talk to your doctor if you have one, and just talk to him about depression and see what they have to say." He definitely was trying to do the right thing, so I went and saw my doctor. Sure enough, he wanted to put me on some depression medicine, and that depression medicine didn't work real well for me. It just made me feel hollow inside. As time went on, I had other veterans, and it was really the Vietnam veterans who were in the post office, because there's a lot of veterans in the post office, who reached out, they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, have you ever thought that you might have PTSD?" And I said, no, that's not me. That's somebody else. That's not me. They kept telling me, "Dan, you need to go into the VA and get checked by the doc and tell them what you've seen, what you've been through." I didn't understand any of it. I just go with the punches, just keep it moving. That's all we know. Mission accomplishment. Don't ever want to show any signs of weakness,
Dan, some of my listeners might right now be thinking, man, this guy's hitting Dan up pretty hard about PTSD. But there's a reason behind this, and it's because I met you at a place called the Big Red Barn Retreat, which I think is an amazing place here in the Midlands for our veterans. Tell me how you came to be associated with the Big Red Barn.
Once I finally got to the point where I read what the symptoms were, which basically took a little old lady to open up a book and show me what the symptoms were, because nobody had done it for me. They just kept telling me about it, but never did anybody ever sit down and say, "Read the symptoms for yourself." When I read the symptoms for myself and I checked them all off, that's when I realized, oh my gosh, this is what I've been suffering with for all these years that I've been in denial about, because I thought it was something completely different than what I've known. Once I had come to the point of actually accepting it, because we're in denial for a lot of times, and then even when we accept it, we're still somewhat in denial because we don't want to put that label or that tag of weakness on ourselves. Once I found out about the Big Red Barn, sure, I thought, a barn, whatever, I'll go check it out. But when I got out there, I realized this wasn't just a Big Red Barn. This was a place of healing. This was a place of peace where I could go and just relax my mind and just look at my life and focus on some of the things that are important.
Dan, we were just talking about the Big Red Barn. What a special place it is. I encourage any of our listeners, if you've had any type of military service, you don't have to be a PTSD veteran. Go and check out Big Red Barn. Let's talk about what the Big Red Barn offers to our veterans and service members here in the Columbia area.
Sure. One is the coffee group. We meet at 9:30 out to Big Red Barn. And then we also have healing arts. We have healing yoga, healing lenses for photography. So if you like painting or you like taking pictures, you don't have to be an expert at any of these things. You got professional people who have been experienced to deal with PTSD and different ailments, physical and mental. And so they're there to be able to help you. It's a self-healing. So they take their time. And even with the photography, Jim Dukes, what he does with the pictures and those people is amazing. I had the opportunity to go out to the Richland County Library when they had that photo op, and it was just amazing to be out there with the other veterans and just to see how much it meant to them to have that outlet. We all have to have an outlet or things spiral out of control. So this is a way of coping, a way to find healing and peace within ourselves. It doesn't have to be anything drastic. The yoga or the healing lenses or just the peer-to-peer support group. They got a fishing pond, they got the garden, and the pavilion down by the fishing pond is second to none. I mean, that thing's amazing. You go down there, they got the fire pit, the wood down there, bathroom. I mean, you don't need anything else. You just sit down there, go fishing. You can go on to the website, thebigredbarnretreat.org, and they have all the different calendar events and things that are going on.
Denial. Most soldiers that I know that are suffering from PTSD have a hard time admitting it. If we've got a veteran out there, they're in denial right now, or a family member that thinks that their loved one may be suffering from PTSD, what are some of the signs that they can look for?
Isolation. That's probably one of the biggest ones. I isolated myself for over 12 years, and that's one of the things that I always hear is lack of the things that you used to have interest in, just lack of interest, memory loss. Maybe you have some memory loss, anxiety issues, the fight or flight. Feels like a kick in the gut. You've encountered that confrontation again, and it's either them or me. It's an irrational thought, but at the same time, for us, it seems rational. It's just what our body goes through. So it's that anxiety, the depression. Maybe you feel alone. Maybe you feel like you're the only one. Maybe you feel like there's nobody that understands you. These are definitely the signs of PTSD, especially if they don't want to go do anything or they They don't want to be around crowds, or sometimes even being around other veterans is going to be too hard for them. That's definitely going to be a key sign of PTSD, is that isolation, depression, anxiety. Those are some of the signs that you might see.
Dan, thank you so much for your service, and thank you so much for coming on to the Soldier Salute.
I thank you, Don, and I appreciate all that you do, brother.
Thanks for joining us in our Soldier Salute, presented by Little Pigs Barbecue. Serving Columbia since 1963 with that bodacious buffet. By Lexington Guns and Shooting Range. Veteran owned and operated. By Carolina Honda Powerhouse. Motorcycles, ATVs, and side-by-sides with discounts for all military personnel. And Dominion Energy. We depend on